Hi everyone, welcome, and I'm so excited to have everyone join us for our first Jamstack Lagos online event. So we usually have this event in person, but because of the current pandemic situation, we're trying to do more online events. Anyway, today I have two amazing speakers that will be speaking to us on Jamstack. I have Maya from Cloudinary, and Maya is based in Israel, and we also have Daniel. Daniel works as a developer advocate at Strapi and is coming live from Zambia. Now we'll have 30 minutes of talk, and then after the talk, you can ask your question. Even while the talk is going on, you can ask your questions, and then we'll have 5 minutes Q&A after that. So looking forward to getting your questions, and I'm also looking forward to learning from Maya and Daniel. So first of all, we'll have Maya give her talk on how to power your Jamstack with Nuxt. Hi, Maya. Hi.
Okay, sorry, 1 second. Hi.
Can you hear me? Hi.
I'm sorry, my headphone just went off for 1 second. So okay, so
Yeah, no
I guess I'm on the show.
Yeah. Yeah, you're live now. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So let's share.
Yeah.
Thank you guys
share your
for
screen.
introduction. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Yeah, you can share your screen now, and yeah.
Awesome. Everyone saw my screen. Good. I take it everyone see my screen. Okay, so let's talk about how to power your Jamstack with Nuxt latest version, like from 2.13 and above, shall we? So a little bit about me and Maya. Well, I'm a senior front-end developer at Cloudinary, and I'm a core maintainer of StorefrontUI. And I'm also an organizer of VueJS Israel, a Vue community in Israel, which are pretty cool and pretty small. And in addition, I'm also a blogger of writing tutorial and some other things I found interesting about JavaScript in general and front-end. In Medium, training, full stack training, and Ultimate courses. And I'm a bookworm. I like reading books in general. And you can always find me on Twitter at Maya Shavin, or at my website, mayashavin.com, or any GitHub, the same thing, Maya Shavin. Okay, so before we start about Nuxt, let's rewind a bit back and talk a little bit about Jamstack. So what is Jamstack? Well, Jamstack, the Jam itself stands for JavaScript, which means everything is client JavaScript. It's not Node.js, it's not backend, it's not Java, everything is front-end. We write the whole entire project on front-end code, which is JavaScript. And A stands for API, which means instead of dealing with all the complicated web servers written in any other backend languages or a complicated database, we don't really need it. Now we have to deal with only one thing, APIs, reusable API and serverless function. Well, serverless function, we use it, it says serverless, but actually it's also hosted on a server, just we don't have to write any complicated servers for it. We just use it, fetch and run it, call it, send the API call to it, and it do all the magic for us. And markup. The last one in markup, which Normally, when you talk about a project client side, which means everything generated on runtime, for example, even if you use server-side rendering, which let's say if you ask for a product on a website and it's generate the page from the server side, and then it's send the page already generated from the template to user on client side. But for Jamstack, this is not needed. Everything already pre-generated on build time as a template generating, and all the content pre-populated, so you have the page ready to serve on the client side, and you don't have to wait for the server to do all the computing on the generating on the go. So that's the big change. And on the page are organized according to file driven instead of the classic way, data driven, which means it according to folder, according to the file name, like you saw slash product slash ABC. That means that the product ABC is located in the folder products. So that's the whole thing about Jamstack. So what is Nuxt? I take it that most of our audience already know more or less about Nuxt.js, but if not, let's go a little bit briefly about Nuxt.js. So Nuxt is actually it started as a server-side rendering framework, and later on it's changed into something more just a server-side framework for VueJS developer. It actually allows you to be more flexible. Assuming you have one single code base, now you can use to build through Nuxt and can generate into 3 different modes, either server-side rendering, which is the classic one, or static site generator, which is the Jamstack mode, static mode, HTML, and single page application, which is client side app, but it have in addition more stuff like pre-generating on the page that is supposed to be static, and whatever is not static, it will be dynamic. So what is the current status of Nuxt before 2.13? Well, is it Nuxt for Jamstack? Well, Nuxt does have the code, the run command for Jamstack. The mode for Jamstack is called Nuxt generate. However, it actually still have the external runtime client side API call for data. Means that, for example, if you have the page, that inside the page you call in the backend side, the API call for more products, display the whole list of products. This call will normally be triggered on the client side on runtime, and it's not static. It actually, your user will still see the loading icon and will still need to wait for the data to be fetched and then display. So it's not 100% static here. It have longer building time compared to Chrism or other static site generator. It doesn't have an auto dynamic routes generated, which, for example, in Chrism, you probably know, or in Gatsby, for example, you probably know that it fetch all the data from the data source and then build the dynamic routes from the data that fetch it. So on runtime, when user asks for some page, it actually pre-generate before. For Nuxt, they don't have this mechanism in advance because they're not connected to any data source. So when you ask for a dynamic route, it normally will not work unless you write in the dynamic route generated yourself in the Nuxt config based on the data. So you have to ask your own logic. There's no marking support if you want to do some CMS, code render or markdown render. Theming support, not exactly. So yeah, it's not 100% static. It does have some static support here, but it's not full static yet. So what's new? Well, for version 2.13 and above, luckily we have full static now. So how does full static look like in Nuxt's newest version? First of all, we have smarter build process. What does it mean by smarter? Well, in general, When we run the command Nuxt generate to compile and build static site from Nuxt project, what it does in the background is that it takes all the templates and codes from our application, build it into application files, and then based on the content and compile together with content and export into static HTML and deploys to the client side using Vercel or Netlify, GitHub page, whatever platform. Now, have a bigger change that in addition to static HTML generated, we have payload file for extra client API calls, which this file is a file that take on the API calls that exist in async data, for example, and for fetch, any fetch before payload, everything will be put into a separate JavaScript file and will be run before the page was delivered to the user. So this saves the fact that we don't have a extra API code and user will not see the click between the data from the server and the browser fetching the data, and will not see any loading effect or any needed loading spinner in addition. And next, have faster deployment. How fast? Well, normally you have templates, content, build, and then generate, which export all the app files based on the content to a static HTML and then deploy, right? And this happened in the first deployment because we cannot do anything else with that. We cannot avoid not doing it. We need to somehow build on the codes that we write into application files, and then we can export whatever we need later on. But for the next deployment, the Nuxt generate already know what the catch it have. So instead of rebuilding everything like it used to be, which take a lot of time, think about it. If you only change a content, a small piece of content, you don't really need to review all the code when you don't change it. And most likely when we ship the product, we don't make a lot of change in our code base. We probably redeploy the whatever change of the code base once a week, unless they have hard fix. But most of the time, it's just the content is changing. So the cache build will stay there. Nuxt generate already know that is what cache is have from previous build. And then on the second deployment, if there's no code change and only content change, it will take the cache build and go straight ahead to generate the static HTML from the newest contents and then deploy. And this saves a lot of time because you don't have to go through the whole process of build and wait for the build to finish and then do the generate the static HTML from that moment on. A dynamic route generator. What does it mean? Well, like I said previously, in Nuxt, you have to actually implement your own logic of how you build, how you fetch the data, and then how you generate it, how you generate the dynamic route from that data in the section generate in Nuxt config. However, now you don't really need to. Well, of course, if you want, you can always override this functionality, but then you don't have to because they have auto detect and generate by crawler. Nuxt have the Nuxt crawler where they go through all of your files and see whenever link, the internal link that needs to be generated. So, for example, if you have the list of all the blog posts, then it will just pre-generate all the blog posts, and then it will say, okay, this is the link that you have, and it will generate it. If whatever is not in your app, it will not generate, which is cool because if you have some drafts that you don't want to be published on your blog post, but you all want it to be stored in your data, Nuxt will not generate the link to that, to the URL, to the route to that content, that blog post, unless you mention it somewhere in the app. Like what we say, if you don't mention it, it doesn't exist. Well, it kind of makes sense, right? Of course, you can, like I said, you can always override this crawler logic yourself in the Nuxt config. So in general, It's optimized the performance in a way that it have faster building time, like we saw. The first deployment, everything like normal, but the second deployment is faster and faster because you don't have to go through the whole build process if there's nothing changed. Faster redeployment, I would say. Smaller generated HTML file size, like because we split all the extra API calls to a separate JS file, so the static HTML generated is always smaller and it always more optimal. And now we have the preload for these files on when before it was served to the client. So we don't have any external code, and this way we make sure that everything stays static, even if we want to use something dynamic within the static file. It has faster app, I already showed it, and it have crawler integrated, like we mentioned before. It detect and generate all the related links, whatever you mentioned, whatever is there. So, and the most important thing is that it have improvement developer and user experience. By adding a new field called target static, it actually allows you to specify whether you want it to export as static or you want to export as server-side rendering in general. And it have all the fallback on redirect and error and have better developer experience, user experience in general. And they have a new command called Nuxt. This allows us to have better testing and local testing for our static app before we deploy. And also we have on the SPA single pay application fallback support if we need it. And that's the good thing about the new Nuxt. And just a bit before we move on to the next session, this is a little bit of comparison I did for the Nuxt generate on the first build. It takes about half a minute for building my own project, and it was good. Half a minute is better than before because I remember it used to take me about 1 minute, 1 minute and a half just to build a very small project. However, on the second time onwards, as you can see, the content change here, or the only thing change here is contents. And this take less than 10 seconds to finish, like about 12, 10. It really depends on how many things you have open on your web laptop at that time, but still, it's much better than 30 seconds, and it's only take about 10 to 11 seconds here to build the whole project again and deploy again with the content change. And this is important because in other hosting platform, they charge us according to how many minutes do we have for building. So it's definitely an improvement to pay attention to. Okay, so what the next thing amazing about Nuxt? Well, like I said, Headless CMS with Nuxt Content. Oh, I love this one. I have to talk about this. This is one of the amazing module improvement that Nuxt have. So what is Nuxt Content? First of all, it's the module of Nuxt.js allow us to fetch all the various files, support like YARN file, Markdown file, CSV, and JSON file. And it has support for Vue component. For example, if you have a component inside application that known for the whole application, here I'm using a Cloudinary image component, and I can write it inside this Markdown file, and this Nuxt Content read it and realize and recognize it within my application and render correctly. It's not no other hack I need to provide. And it's have MongoDB query builder and the search builder according to Loki.js. So on the fetch, like here, it's very human readable, very simple, and you can also do fetch according to a title and description, or you can fetch some content according to a sort, limit, and skip, and whenever, or you can also filter it, or you can also group it by certain tag. It just very readable and very easy to understand. And have built code highlighting. This is one of the things I must say I love it, because I have so much trouble in trying to implement some code highlighting inside Nuxt before, like Markdown ID and Markdown 8 or something. It was always give me trouble. It always gave me a lot of headache. So now with Pram.js built in Nuxt Content, I don't have to worry about it anymore. I can just write a function like this, and then I use the A11 white dark theme Pram.js, and then it will just render like the one you saw here. That's it. And it has a lot of themes to choose from. And the good thing about Pram.js is that it's open source. So you can always fork it, create your own theme, and then you can use it in Nuxt Content also as your own theme. Cool, right? And it has auto-generated table content. For example, if you have the whole file structure like the one you saw here, with the proper heading 1, heading 2, and heading 3, when on fetching the content, Nuxt engine already know to compile to create for you a table of content object with contain all the objects according to the date and according to the ID and the text. So you can build your own look and feel table content based on this structure. No need to think further how to read all the markdown file and get what you need to do. And it's a hot CMS reload and content hooks. What does it mean? We'll take a look later. Okay. How to set up? Simple. Yarn art or Nuxt, not Nuxt. Yarn art or npm install, and you do you add the Nuxt content in the module, and then you add content. And the content is the key field in Nuxt config. On the left side, on my left side, which is okay, never mind. You know, so you can see that the content is. This is the structure of the content repository in the content folder directory in my project, which have a blog and have post and have article. By default, the content take the directory name content, but you can always override it to any folder name that you would like to, and it allow you to do to configure what is the full text search field here. Like here you have title and description, you can add more, or I have markdown on the configuration, extra configuration for markdown. Like for example, here I have I config that I want all the external link to be open in the new tab, because I really hate it every time when I click on the link. Let's say GitHub is always change the whole page inside that tab, and I just want to open it in the new tab. So this is one of the nice things. And also you can define the theme of the code highlighting here to whatever theme that you want. Very simple. And how to use it? In the page that you want to fetch, you can just do fetch by using the $ content. Well, when you install Nuxt content, the module already injected $ content instant into your application, so that you can have access to $ content everywhere in your application. And here you can just do content and then put the file name inside there and then .fetch. According to the syntax, which is here, I say example means that I want to get the content / example file and then fetch it and got the page. And then next in the template section, all you need to do is use the Nuxt content component and pass the page that you will fetch before into the document attribute, and that's it. And it's done. Now you have the whole page up and running. Well, of course, you have to do a little bit of styling, a little bit of CSS here and there, but the main thing that you don't have to write how to render heading 1, how to render this section, how to render the code. Everything go automatically. Cool, right? And the hooks. This is the hard CMS that we're talking previously. The hooks, we have 2 hooks. The first one is the before insert, which means adding before storing the document inside your application, like before it reaches to the result function, fetch in a page or in a component when you ask for content. Here you can actually add more data inside. Like I always add a reading time for my blog Like I calculate about how much time for people to read my blog, and then I insert a field inside the document, and then when I get it on the component itself, I already have this field and I just display it. And content update, this is what tell you when the CMS content updated. This is very important for you if you want to write some live update in application, for example. But in general, we have two and love it. And the latest one that it just released about 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago is the documentation with theme. What is exactly documentation with theme? It means that you allow you to write documentation easily with also a theme with Nuxt content. All you need to do is yarn create Nuxt content docs and add your project name, and then put the settings in setting.json, which on the metadata or on the logo you want to display on the documentation page with GitHub and Twitter, simple. And you can also add theme using Tailwind config because this using Tailwind in the background. And if any one of you don't know what is Tailwind CSS, go check it out. It's just amazing. And so here you can, back to our talk. So here we can just define the colors, the theme that you want according to the primary. You set the whole theme with from 100 to 900. And here you go. We have the theme. Here we have Nuxt Strapi, which Daniel will going to talk about the Nuxt Strapi later on. Or we have Storybook with the theme, pink theme. And we have Cloudinary Nuxt with blue theme. All of this, it just go with 3 simple setup steps, and everything here you can build with Markdown, and it's just so simple to do. So if you are working on an open source project, documentation is just as easy as it can be. Okay, dark mode support with color mode and Tailwind CSS module. Well, for accessibility, dark mode, light mode is the trend now that you have to have in your application in order for user to be able to switch between dark and light. It's more accessible. And how to do it? Like in Nuxt, with Nuxt.js color mode, you can actually enjoy switching between different mode, like in this screenshot. And how to set it up? Simple. Sorry, I'm using this word a lot because I found simple, but of course, with some people, that's not that simple. I hope it will be more trivial for you. Anyway, so yeah, so you just need to do yarn art, color mode module, and then put this color mode inside the build modules because this is some module that was during the building time, and then set up the color mode. You also don't need to set up. I don't really set up this one unless you have some preference that you want to be the default. Otherwise, the default mode of color mode is good enough. And how to use it? Color mode module give you the class selector with according to the color, which means here you have light mode, have dark mode, and have system mode. And also, in addition, it inject a $ color mode instant into your application, so you have access to what is the current chosen mode from user and what is the system mode and whatever is not defined. And you can also use it with CSS variable to define the color for your application, and then choose in dark mode or light mode, or in addition here you have sepia mode, and then just use CSS variable as usual to keep your application as is, like keep your application structure as is, a CSS structure not change and is stable. I highly recommend to use CSS variable whenever you can, especially now that we already declared that IE11 is dying. So yeah, why not? And with Tailwind CSS, how do you do that? First, we install Tailwind CSS dark mode to allow us to use dark mode in Tailwind. And then we add the Tailwind CSS in the build mode, in the module to use Tailwind CSS in Nuxt application on in the build mode, build module. And then in Tailwind config, we define the dark selector a dark mode, which is the color that will which is a selector that will generate by color mode module. And we set on the variance on the dark variance for in the variance section. because this is important for us, for the engine to know how to switch between dark and light mode for Tailwind CSS. And lastly, we use it like if you want to be to something like border white only on dark mode, you say dark dot dot and border white. And if it's not in dark mode, it will fall back to border black. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. And there's more. You have Nuxt Cloudinary for optimized image, which I highly recommend you check it out because I wrote it. But anyway, it's good for Jamstack, obviously, because optimize all your image in your application without you worrying about what to do with them. And have smart prefetching, runtime config, build component detection. All these features are already in Nuxt 2.13 enabled. Then I recommend you to check it out and try it. More resources on content, on Cloudinary, on Tailwinds, and column modes you can read here. And that's it. I wrote a demo app you can check out in fullstackapp.verso.app or repo, and it's the full not static. So it's open source. Feel free to check it out. And if you have any question, I just hit me up. I love to receive questions, and if I can see if I can answer you, it's great. And I hope you enjoy my talk. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Maya. I really enjoyed your talk. Yeah,
I hope so. Because it always weird to me that I am talking to the wall.
I know, right? I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm sure everybody learned something from your talk. I've also been working a lot with Nuxt, and yeah, I'm looking forward to try some of the things that I just learned.
Yeah, just let me know if you have any question. Anyway, Nuxt is amazing. So, if Nuxt with Cloudinary is amazing. So go check it out.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions for Maya, you can leave it in the chat, or you can just reach out to her on Twitter. Her handle is just right there, Maya Shavin. Yeah. Thank you so
very
much, Maya. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So next we have Daniel, but before Daniel comes on, we'll just go on like a 2-minute break and we'll be right back. All right. Yeah, I'm back, and we have Daniel. Daniel Fury is a developer advocate at Strapi and is going to be speaking to us today about Strapi.js, and I'm looking forward to learning more about that. Daniel is also joining us all the way from Zambia. Yeah. So, hi, Daniel. You're mute.
There we go. Okay. Hey, lots of technical difficulties.
I know. Yeah.
The demo codes don't like me, but I'm super happy to be here all the way from Zambia.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you. Let me know when you're ready to go, and you can first of all share your screen.
Yeah, I think I'm already doing that. Am I? Wait, just give me a minute.
Yeah.
Not yet. No, okay, let me just get to that.
Okay.
All right. I'm using Firefox, so please forgive me. If anything, just shut.
You're not using Internet Explorer.
Hey. I mean, I don't know if that would have given me as many issues, but let's go with it. Okay, I'm assuming everyone can see my screen now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. So I'll be doing
Good luck.
something. Thank you very much. Fingers crossed. Please be kind. Cool. I think let's get to it. I'll be telling you all about how to reach for the stars with Strapi. This was a very off the top of my head talk title. I'll actually just be telling you about Jamstack and Strapi and where Strapi fits in and how to get started with using Strapi. My name is Daniel Madelitsopiri, and you can find me almost or literally anywhere on the internet as Malgamviz. I do developer relations at Strapi, and I'm a disc jockey, as a lot of my fellow programmers are also. You can find me on Mixcloud also as Malgamviz. So there might be a couple of Lego references, maybe. I'm just leaving this open for everyone to explore and discover as I go along. So good luck with that. Just a small warning. Getting into what we'll be doing today, we'll be looking at the Jamstack and what that is. We'll be doing a quick Strapi 101, getting into Strapi, how to use it, and then we will be seeing how we can use Strapi in our own specific stacks. And maybe if the demo gods are kind, we'll do a demo. They haven't been kind to me lately, so let's see how that goes. Cool. Oh wait, what's happening? My slides are still loading. Let's just switch to this and do some sort of quick thinking. Okay, cool. So the Jamstack. What is the Jamstack? I really like to look at the Jamstack as this new web-based architecture, which uses, of course, JavaScript for the J, APIs for the A, and markup. A lot of people assume that when you think of the Jamstack, like JavaScript, APIs, and markup, you have to have each and every one of them for you to actually call your application a Jamstack application. I think that isn't necessarily true. Jamstack is use as much as you want or as little as you want. I like to have this really cool abstraction, which I will show people in the next slide. And this really makes me think of it less of a stack and more of an architecture. Because if you think about the stacks that exist, the mean stack or the lamp stack, each and every single component that is in the abbreviation mean MEAN is used in that stack, right? And same for like lamp, LAMP. But with Jamstack, it's literally as little as you want or as much as you want. And I like to abstract this with this little diagram. We have like developers, we have a content team, we have a CMS, could be Strapi. We have a web app, Nuxt, of course. I'm like Maya, I really, really enjoy using Nuxt. Sorry, and then we have end users, of course. So with Jamstack, we have the API and the CMS portion. So that's the A part. And then the J and the M are really our choice. If we go for something like a single page application, then we're really using more of the JavaScript portion to deliver content to our end users, right? Because that content is dynamic, unlike the markup in M, which is usually static and generated on build. Either way, the CMS plays a huge portion because it delivers content to the web app, be it a dynamic JavaScript application or a static site generator that gives you, that spits out markup. So that's sort of the trajectory of data and where the J, the A, and the M stand in the whole Jamstack architecture. I'll just do a quick check and see if my slides are back. Cool. I think this is a much better view for everyone. Sorry about that. Yeah, so that's what I was saying. It's really more of an architecture and less of a where you have like a web app, you have like a CMS, and you have the choice to go dynamic with the JavaScript or you can go static with the markup. And that's Jamstack. And now I'll do like a quick Strapi 101. I really wish this was in person because I really like to ask questions. So like if I was in Lagos right now, I would probably be asking who's heard of Strapi, but probably people did research when doing this. So Strapi is a headless CMS, and I'll get into what a headless CMS is a bit later on. And there's a few really remarkable things. I like to call them remarkable about Strapi. So one is it's open source, completely open source. You can head over to github.com/Strapi and you can see its source code. You can contribute. Would love you to come contribute. It's got a fully customizable API. You can have hooks, you can have middleware, you can create your own functions in Strapi, and all of this is perceived in your request and response. So the API is fully customizable and it's super cool. It's also self-hosted, so you own your data. You choose where you want to have Strapi. You can have it on like a VM somewhere. You can run it on your own laptop. I've seen people have backends. I think people used to do that for WordPress or Joomla, use their local host as production. But yeah, it's self-hosted. You can literally host it anywhere you want. It's also 100% JavaScript. It's built with Node.js, so I think JavaScript is getting pretty popular, and the open source portion comes in here. If you want to contribute and you know JavaScript, it's a really good place to be. And it's got a really robust plugin system. We've got some very interesting plugins with a lot of third parties. We've got a very popular Cloudinary plugin for delivering images, which I use myself, and that's amazing. And last but definitely not least, Strapi supports GraphQL. So we've got a REST API and we've got a GraphQL API. GraphQL is amazing, and that's what I'll be using in this application to sort of show you how to integrate Strapi in various front ends. I think being a headless CMS, GraphQL should be a natural choice, and I'll get a little bit into that a bit later. So I did mention that I would tell you a lot more about what headless CMSs are. So these are just backends where content is accessible via calls made to an API. Like I mentioned, it's either REST or GraphQL. With traditional CMSs, things like Drupal or WordPress or Joomla come into your mind, where you have a system, you go to Malgambit or WordPress.com, and that's your backend, but that's also your front end. Everything is in one silo, if I could use that word, where your data, although there is a backend, it's not necessarily disconnected from its front end, and you edit your front end and back end in the same sort of ecosystem. And that's really, I guess, was a huge fallout in today's world where content is literally everywhere. It's more of an advantage to have your content disconnected from front ends, and headless CMSs provide exactly that. I think this is a really good diagram to show what headless CMSs do. So like I said, REST or GraphQL, if anything can make an HTTP request, then it can probably get content from a headless CMS. So mobile phones, there's Flutter devs out there, that's for you. There's people who work on wearable content, that's for you. There's people who do websites. And websites, to be honest, when we talk about headless CMSs, go way beyond just blogs, to be honest. There's e-commerce, and I'll get into a bit of those use cases. My bad, I jumped the gun. So I think I touched on it a bit earlier. A lot of people assume that with headless CMSs, the only thing you can do is, websites. I think that's the curse of, not necessarily the curse of WordPress, because everyone used WordPress for websites. So everyone assumes, okay, headless CMSs can only be used for websites, but there's so many use cases, from marketing to advertising. We've had people build video games with Strapi. We've had people power content on posters, or billboards on the streets, or information, or televisions at airports, to menus at restaurants. You go to KFC, you go to like Burger King. We have Hungry Lion in Zambia. All these things like leverage headless CMSs. Some really interesting use cases are also like voice technology. We have like Alexas and Raspberry Pis, a lot of these like smartwatches. All of these are really interesting use cases for things like headless CMSs. So it's way beyond just the Jamstack. But because this is Jamstack Lagos, we'll be going into the Jamstack. Strapi is also super easy to run. This is literally the only command that you need to run. So it's yarn create Strapi app and name your project whatever you want. So in the backend, Strapi you have the choice of either having like MongoDB for a database or PostgreSQL. Did I say that right? Yeah, Postgres. I just call it Postgres. Or like even just like a MySQL database. So it's pretty flexible even how you store your data or where you store it. And yeah, I don't know if anyone is bold or adventurous enough to actually run this right now, I dare you. So yeah, go for it. And hopefully we can do a quick demo. I just need to check something. Let's see how my VS Code is doing. Okay, so I have Strapi running already. Have something in production also. Let's see how that's doing. Okay, so this is sort of like the Strapi UI. Don't judge the way my emojis look. I use Firefox and they don't render emojis really well. So something really important, I mentioned the plugin system. We've got a really robust plugin content, which is the content types builder. This builds out how like your content schema looks like. I have a couple examples here for articles and blogs. And yeah, I think let's check out the blog one. So I think this is a pretty good example of what a content schema or a content model would look like. We call them content models with Strapi. So you have like a title, you define the field, it's a text field, you have a description, it's also a text field, you can have published dates, you can have features, you can have a body, and once you create this, so this is the blog content type, we can add content to it anytime. So here we go, this is how we do it. Okay, so I can edit this content or I can add additional content at any time, and that can show up on so this is an app that I made with, I think this was Sapper and Strapi, but that's not what we're doing now. This is me just showing you how Strapi looks and how we can get it, how you can get it up and running. So immediately you get it up and running, you run the command yarn create Strapi app, your project name, you enter your details, you create an administrator account, and you're brought into an interface like this where you just start messing around with building content types and getting data. So I will go back to the slides. Hopefully that was an okay demo. So we're going to tackle Strapi in your stack now. We want to use Nuxt. How we do this, we'll follow a few easy steps. So install Apollo client first, because we'll be using Strapi's Graphql plugin and the Graphql package also. And then we'll get our Strapi endpoint, edit our config file, and then write some code. I put that because I see a lot of people laughing at people who use like codes. So I thought it would be funny. No idea how this hit, so let's just go ahead with that. So we have our Nuxt application, create a normal Nuxt application, and you want to add Strapi content to it. I just demoed like running Strapi and getting it up and running, and now you actually want to add GraphQL to it. So in your Nuxt project, this is the command you run, yarn add Nuxt.js / Apollo. That's for the Nuxt module. Is it a module? I think it's a module, yeah. The Nuxt Apollo module and the GraphQL package, and that gives you the ability to sort of query GraphQL APIs. So once you install this, module, all you have to do is go into your Nuxt config.js file and have create like small credentials for your Apollo client. So client configs is really just your HTTP endpoint, and with Strapi, it's always localhost 1337/GraphQL. And after you do that, just save your file, and you'll be able to query your Strapi GraphQL endpoint using Apollo client. And then, oh wait, that's too. My bad. Press the wrong button. Okay, yeah, this is us. Where are we? We just added our endpoint to our config file, and now we need to make some GraphQL queries. So GraphQL is an API like language format that lets you, I like to say, get exactly what you want, unlike REST where you have dozens of APIs and endpoints, dozens of endpoints. You can only use one endpoint and query everything you have. Like I said, Strapi's endpoint is at localhost, here it is, localhost 1337. And this is sort of how you build out, let me just zoom in here so things make a bit more sense. So yeah, this is our API, and we can query anything we want. So if we only want someone's name, an album name from our API, we can run the query and we can get that. So these are the results. We have two items in our albums, content type, and the name is Malgambas on air and vibe check on your loved ones. This is sort of a JSON type format, and we can display this in our front end. And right now I want to leave it like this, and I'll show you how it looks in the front end a little bit later. But if we undo a lot of what we did, we have the name, the description, and an image. And inside the image, we have a URL. So these are just like fields that we can query from our Strapi API. And if I run that, we can get all the details. And all this is delivered to our front end in a very readable way. And then we can display that. So this is a query which we can use to fetch all the necessary data from Strapi. And that is what we'll be doing next. So all we have to do now is create a file, a GQL, a GraphQL file. That's why we installed the GraphQL package, so we can leverage files like this. We create one called albums, and we add this query. After adding this query, save the file, and then we go into our index.view file, which is where you sort of build out your web application. So notice here, the first import statement is for the albums query. What we're doing is getting the query we just made and feeding it into Apollo and saying, hey, go and fetch this data from Strapi and then return that, return the result to me so I can use it basically. And in Nuxt, what we do is in the script tag, if you're familiar with how Nuxt works, we have a script tag where we can add our JavaScript. We have a data function where we define a few data properties, albums, and a query. And that's just so that the Apollo module works well, so that we know that once we receive the data from Apollo, we can store it in that data property and then use that in our application. So our query here is called albums query, and that's what we feed into Apollo as a query. And we use the computed property and define a filtered list function. Really, that just filters everything we get to lowercase, and then we'll be able to render that in like the template portion of our Nuxt application. So TLDR, I hope I said that right. You just get your query from the file you just created, feed it into the Apollo client, and mess around with the data to format it ready for rendering on your web page. And that's really what we're doing here. So now this is the template section that I was talking about. It might seem a little too much, but I really just want you to pay attention to the div tag here. So album.name is the exact structure that we had in our query. So it's just like going through and parsing JSON files. So album.name is what we want to display. We can do the same for album.description and album.image. Sorry. So that's exactly what we're doing here. Album.name, we display the album name, and we display the album description. And if you pay attention here, we have an image tag, and we use the special like view source so that we can use we can like sort of interpolate the album image URL and have that appear. And that's all we need to do to actually have content appearing on Strapi. I'll just take you through what that looks like. So your config file, add your API endpoint, install the relevant packages, actually write out your query, and then import your query, feed it into Apollo, do some processing with your data, and then display it on your web page. And that's all we did. Oh, wrong slide, sorry. And this is how our application looks. I'll just scale that down a bit. And I want to sort of compare the data. Sorry, this would be a bit of a mess, but it will make sense in a bit. Sort of want to compare the data we got here. So this is the exact query that we just ran in our file. And when you run that, you get malnumbers on air as a result, which we get here also. We have the description, which we get here also. And for the second item, it's the same thing. So we're really just, this is the Graphql playground, which you can use to test out your queries before you paste them into your application. And this is just sort of like telling you that I'm not lying about what I'm saying. Yeah, and that's really delivering content with Strapi. Ignore that. And I'm very happy that this demo, at least, was not a complete failure. So Strapi is super cool. Like I said, it goes way beyond Jamstack. You can find almost every resource you want at strapi.io. Be it strapi.io/blog/tutorials. We've got a YouTube channel, we've got Twitter. You can hit me up, or you can join our Slack. I'm hoping this gives you a bit more context into how to use Strapi, where to use Strapi, and I'm really excited to see what everyone here builds. So yeah, thank you. Please share your thoughts, and thank you again.
Hey Daniel, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can. Please don't tell me like I was muted the whole time.
No.
Okay.
I switched my mic, so I'm just checking that it works. But yeah, well done. I really enjoyed the talk. I have seen a lot of Strapi, and it's really great to see how it works from your demo, which did not fail.
Yeah, I'm super happy about that. I think the scars of last night have taught me a few lessons, and I'm much more equipped to handle problems when they come up. So there's probably something that failed. I just didn't tell everyone.
Yeah. But yeah, if anybody has questions for Daniel, you can put it in the chat, or you can reach out to Daniel. Daniel, what's your Twitter handle?
It's Malgamves, Malgamves. So that's me everywhere on the internet.
Great.
Yes.
So, thank you so much for coming on to our first ever online Jamstack Lagos meetup.
Oh, is it the first one?
Yeah, this is the first one. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm super excited to do more of this and see where it leads. Yeah,
I'd love to come back. There's a lot of really cool applications that I've built with Strapi that I want to show off.
Great. So happy to have you anytime.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Yeah.
Awesome. Bye.
Great. All right. Thank you all for tuning in. I really enjoyed both talks from Maya and Daniel. It was really great to learn more about Nuxt and as well learn more about Strapi. I hope you all also learned something from both talks. Thank you. And we'll be having a second episode of this Jamstack Lagos virtual meetup. And if you want to know or if you want to be notified, you can follow us on Twitter at Jamstack Lagos. Yeah. And also share with your friends to also join. Thank you all so much and have a nice day.